3 people died and several people went missing because of flash floods in Pennsylvania following heavy rainfall that totaled almost 7.5 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain. Tropical Storm Hillary brought record rainfall to southern parts of Southern California that triggered flooding and mudslides that shut down major roadways and forced multiple rescues that had to happen. And even a state of emergency was declared for several other counties in West Virginia following heavy rainfall and flash flooding. Now, I could go on and on with lots of flooding issues, but I'm sure as you've seen all over the news, just as I have, these stories happen all of the time. And the takeaway is basically this: floods are serious. And they're a serious problem, and we need to address them and keep communities safe and resilient. That's the whole goal. As a civil engineer, especially if you're in the water resources arena, there are specific career paths for you that deal more closely with flood events, and today we want to talk about them. Specifically, we want to talk about what a floodplain manager is, and these are folks that work behind the scenes to protect communities from the impacts that come from flooding, which includes not only damages to property and the environment, but also loss of life. Now, in this video, I'm going to be diving into the world of floodplain management, what you do as a floodplain manager, the professional certification that you need to get if you're going to go that route, and the training and resources that can help you get started on that journey. Hey, I'm Isaac Okeson. I'm here with Civil Engineering Academy, a platform built by civil engineers to help other fellow civil engineers just like you help you pass your professional exams and supercharge your career. Thanks for being with me on another quick tip video we're producing, and this one's going to be coming up right after this. Okay, let's start from the very beginning. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is also known as FEMA, is the national entity that supports and regulates these initiatives to reduce and recover from all types of hazards, which also includes flooding. Now, FEMA defines floodplain management as a community program to implement measures to prevent and reduce the risk of current and future flooding, resulting in a more resilient and safer community. Now, a floodplain manager is a professional responsibility for the daily implementation of those measures. It could be an existing staff person already working for the community, such as a civil engineer in the public works department, but a community can also outsource via contracts. They can contract work out to get the job done by county, another jurisdiction that's out there, or even a private firm. So what you do as a floodplain manager for a community could include a bunch of things, but here are some things that you could be doing. You could be reviewing and issuing permits for developing projects that are happening in your community's floodplains. You could also be updating the community's floodplain prevention plan. You could prepare funding applications for the community so you can get dollars for this type of floodplain activity. You'll also oversee the design, construction, and implementation of flood mitigation projects. And another one is that you're going to keep documents that keep the community eligible to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. There's a lot more that you do as well. With such a wide range of tasks that are involved, there are various professions that you can get involved in floodplain management. Not only just civil engineers dive into this arena, but there are a lot of civil engineers too. That's one route that you can go, especially if you're diving into the water resources arena for sure, and probably one that you should definitely consider going into. Now, storms are happening more frequently and heavier than ever before due to climate change, and the losses and damages from floods caused by these storms are just getting more and more severe. I'm sure you've seen that in the news. So it's clear that the need for flood mitigation projects and floodplain managers to work on these projects is only going to continue to increase. Okay, now that you can get into floodplain management and you know that maybe that's a route you want to go into, let's talk about the licensure aspect of this thing. Just as the PE license is the mark of a professional civil engineer, the floodplain management field also has its own certification that showcases, first, your competence in floodplain management, and second, your knowledge of all the concepts and regulations that go into that. This certification is the National Certified Floodplain Manager Program by the Association of State Floodplain Managers. I know that's a mouthful. We're going to break it down. This was basically established in 1998 to create a baseline testing of professional competence in floodplain management. The professional test is the Certified Floodplain Manager exam. It's also called the CFM exam, and it's handled by the Association of State Floodplain Managers itself. But if you live in one of their 6 chapter states, the certification process is handled directly with them. These states are Arkansas, Illinois, New Mexico, North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Texas. I'm going to leave a link below the video in the description so you can check those out to the Floodplain Management Association that's tied to each one of these states so you can know right where to go if you fall in there. Okay, now let's dive into the exam itself so you know what you're basically going to be up against. So similar to the FE and the PE exam, this is a CBT exam. It's a computer-based testing exam. It's a closed book exam delivered online by Measure Learning, and it has 120 multiple choice questions and true or false questions, and you have 3 hours to complete this exam. For you to pass the exam, you need to get at least 84 questions correct. Now, the exam questions can fall into 7 categories broken down like this by the number of questions that can be asked about each one. It doesn't require you to work out math problems, but part of it involves answering questions based on data from basically flood insurance rate maps and excerpts of flood insurance studies. So it's a lot of material you got to go through. Now, these supplemental resources are provided in digital format for you during the exam, just like the NCEES handbooks and the codes and standards on the FE and PE exam. But unlike the FE and PE that you actually have to go into a testing center for, you can take the Certified Floodplain Manager exam in 3 different ways. So the first way that you can take that is you can actually go to a testing center. That's the traditional way to do that and probably one you're familiar with. The second way you can do this is you actually can take it from your home office with basically a remote proctored option. Here, a proctor is basically going to monitor you live through your webcam for the 3 hours of the exam. You probably have to show your room around, make sure there's no material in there. And finally, you can take it at an in-person event that offers the exam. This includes conferences as well as workshops, and that's how the exam was first offered way back in 1999. All right, next up, let's talk about the exam registration. To actually register for the exam, you're going to need to submit an application form that I will also link in the description below. And with a payment, you have to pay a fee, right? All these exams have fees. Now, the fee for this exam is $585 for non-members of the Association of State Floodplain Managers. And if you are a member, you can register for the exam using your online account instead, which is easy. And the fee is considerably lower, sitting at $185 to go register for that exam. And after you submit your application, you're going to receive an email from Measure Learning directing you to select one of the 3 exam options that I mentioned before on how you take those. And then you're going to schedule a date and a time that works best for you, and off you go. If everything checks out, you're going to receive a confirmation email, and that's when you know you're good to go. Now, if you need to reschedule your exam or cancel your exam, you can do it, but they're going to charge additional fees to do so. Sounds like the FE or PE exam. And if you keep rescheduling your exam, keep in mind that your application is valid only for 1 year, and then you're going to have to re-up that. If you don't take your exam within the 1 year period and your application is approved, you're going to need to submit an entirely new application and pay the full application fee again. So you definitely don't want to do that because we don't want to pay more fees than we have to, right? All right, so now let's talk about what happens after the exam. After you go and take the exam, the results will either pop up on the screen immediately or you'll receive them actually in your email a few hours later with your score reported right there. If you need to retake your exam, you'll need to get in touch with your association that you live in one of those 6 accredited states that we mentioned before and go through their own process to get that done again. If you don't, then you're going to have to submit the exam retake application form, which I will also link below this video, along with the exam retake fee of $85, or do it via your online portal. Then once you pass your exam, you'll receive a certification in the mail with no additional steps needed on your end. However, if you want to keep the credential valid, you're going to need to basically renew it every 2 years by completing those professional development hours, PDHs, or continuing education credits, whatever you want to call it, that basically we all love doing. Am I right? You got to get those PDHs in. For the Certified Floodplain Manager program, you're going to need 16 hours during that 2-year cycle, and then submit the renewal application form that they're going to send you via email, along with a renewal fee of $120 for members or $500 for non-members, plus the proof of your 16 credits. So quite a bit to re-up that license, but it's a good one to do. All right, now that you know what a floodplain manager does and the Hallmark certification that you're going to need to get, how do you get started on this journey? Many people don't even know that. The first thing that you need to do is to become familiar with and expand your knowledge of floodplain management topics, regulations, the National Flood Insurance Program requirements, flood maps and studies, and a whole lot more. All right, there is a multitude of training and study resources out there to help you become a floodplain manager, and these will help you to prepare for the Certified Floodplain Manager exam as well if you end up wanting to take it. And the reason for this is because they use the same technical references suggested as study material by the Association of State Floodplain Managers itself to those who plan to take the exam. So here's a list of the 5 floodplain management training resources if you're interested in getting knee-deep into this thing. I'll be leaving a link below as well to each one of these in the description, as well as a link to the page with the technical references suggested by the association. We're definitely not going to leave you hanging. Okay, now the first one is the FEMA publication number 480, Floodplain Management Requirements, a study guide and desk reference for local officials. This is definitely the place to start your floodplain management studies, and it's the number 1 technical reference suggested by the Association of State Floodplain Managers. In fact, if you're planning on taking the exam, the association goes even further to say that this is the most frequently cited technical reference for the exam itself, which means most of the exam questions are based on this bad boy alone. It has a plethora of information broken down into 10 chapters, and it's basically going to be your go-to resource when learning about floodplain management topics and terminology. And the best part about it all is that there are questions at the end of each chapter with answer keys, which will, more questions is always better. It's going to help you put the knowledge in, basically into practice, as well as practice problems for the real exam if you are thinking about taking this. All right, second, a few state associations publish floodplain management training materials and resources. You can probably find some of these on your own. Go check out their websites for your own association. But one that floodplain managers have really ranked high across the board is one from Pennsylvania Association of State Floodplain Managers. Their study guide is basically broken down into 6 units that cover floodplain concepts, mapping, regulations, flood hazards, mitigation, and more. You can download all of that as a slide deck in a digital format, so it's all ready to go. They even have mapping and elevations certificate exercises with solutions and a practice exam tailored to the Certified Floodplain Manager exam, so it is definitely a good resource to check out. We'll make sure we'll link that for you as well. Other great resources that floodplain managers themselves say they use when getting into this field are those provided by the Ashokan Watershed Stream Management Program, or you could call that AWSMP. They publish video tutorials explaining how to read flood insurance studies and flood insurance rate maps, which is a good portion for the of the exam itself. And even better, they have a YouTube playlist dedicated exclusively to uploading floodplain management material. Now, if you combine these with more visually appealing resources and more formal publications, it's a good way to reinforce those floodplain management concepts in your brain. All right, one big aspect of floodplain management is the federal regulations related to it. So other things you need to get familiar with is Title 44 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 59 and 60. Part 59 covers eligibility requirements for communities to qualify for national flood insurance programs, while Part 60 explains the criteria for wise land management and use. These two cover the requirements that have to be enforced by floodplain managers to make sure their communities comply with the codes that are out there, which keeps them eligible to receive flood insurance as needed. And to wrap up this list, we definitely have YouTube. It's our go-to source, right, for everything. We can find basically anything we want on here, and it's the same thing for floodplain management. So just search up some terms. You'll find some great videos. There's the Floodplain Management Basics video by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, which dives into basically the basics of the stuff so you know what you're getting into. There's also a complete floodplain training list by Flood Resource Center with lecture videos of about 30 minutes or less covering main topics that you're going to need to know, from mapping elevation certificates to national flood insurance programs and more. So YouTube is definitely your friend here. All right, so I'm sure you've probably already realized by now that all of these resources you need to become familiar with to become a floodplain manager are scattered basically all over the place. You need to go to different websites to download their study resources separately. Then you got to put them all together and organize your studies basically on your own. Now, to save you all the trouble, we at Civil Engineering Academy created the Ultimate Floodplain Manager Review course for you. Now, this is a complete floodplain management training course that gathers all of the scattered resources that are out there and organizes them logically and into a single structured curriculum to make it easier for you to become a certified floodplain manager. It was created by a certified floodplain manager that we have on our CEA team, and it's based on technical references, guides, and manuals that floodplain managers themselves use on the job, and the Association of State Floodplain Managers suggest as study material for the certified floodplain manager exam. So the course gives you all of the floodplain management knowledges that you basically need to ace this, which can help you pass your certified floodplain manager exam if you decide to take it, because it's based on the exact same references. All right, if you want to check it out, just go to floodplainreviewcourse.com or click in the link in the description below that we're going to have for you, and you're going to be well on your way to getting a complete training course that has everything you need to become a floodplain manager, and eventually, of course, becoming a certified floodplain manager and getting that certification to help boost your career, which is definitely a huge boost to you. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for this video. These flood events will only get more and more frequent as climate change becomes more and more of a big deal and a big issue that's out there. So the need to basically have floodplain managers is going to be here to stay. If you want to listen from a floodplain manager himself before you take the leap, you can check out our interview that we did with Jared Coleman, who works as a certified floodplain manager for the city of Aurora. We also did an awesome interview with Matt Fangella, who is the creator of our course. You'll want to check that out too. So, and if you end up taking the leap and you want to jump in, go join us at the Ultimate Floodplain Manager Review course. It's basically the only training that you need and the resource you need to pass this thing. It's all there. It's all based on technical references that are industry standard within the floodplain management field. So you can check that out at floodplainreviewcourse.com. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell to get more of what we are offering here. We're publishing this stuff all the time. We've got tons of practice problems for you, interviews with successful engineers passing their exams, and a whole lot more. If you want to find other ways that we can help you even further, you can check out our main site as well, civilengineeringacademy.com. You're going to find everything you need there to help crush your civil PE, your FE exam if you're still trying to get that done. And we also have the California Seismic and Survey Review course in the works for you as well. So that's going to be it for this one. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.